What's up, everybody? So as reptile keepers, we should always be trying to improve our husbandry techniques, and we should always be trying to give our reptiles better lives. Now that means being open to different information, whether it's advances in technology or just listening to long-term breeders who have a lot more experience than us regular keepers have. So today I'm going to be doing a enclosure revamp on my Ackie enclosure after finding out some new information and learning some things that can give this guy a better life in captivity. I'd like to give a special shout out to Brandon from Rare Earth and Darren Oliver. These two guys have been breeding Ackie monitors for well over 10 years, and these guys have helped me a lot. Brandon, of course, is the guy that I got Thunder from. He's an Ackie monitor breeder here in the States, and Darren is a Ackie monitor breeder from the UK. And both of these guys, they're great guys. They have been so supportive. Anything I ask them, they always give me information. They've always gotten back to me, and I can't thank them enough for the information that they've given me. So guys, the information that they've given to me, I'm going to put in my enclosure, and hopefully if you guys have Ackie monitors, maybe some of this information can help you in your keeping of Varanus Sac and Thuris as well. With all that being said, let's get started.
Yeah, been looking forward to this for quite a while.
Hey, buddy.
Oh yeah.
Wood was actually, just broken down over time.
To start off with, I bought this stand for the enclosure. Now, one basic idea in reptile keeping is whenever you're approaching an animal or you're trying to tame an animal, it's easier to do so when the animal is at eye level or for arboreal species above you. Now, Ackie monitors are not an arboreal species, but as you can clearly see, my Ackie monitor's tank is currently on the floor. And what I notice is sometimes he'll get a bit jumpy whenever I approach the enclosure, because this little guy is, number one, a very small monitor. Number two, this little guy is he sleeping? When this little guy walks, he's only about an inch or two off the ground. Now, mind you, human beings are normally about 5 feet or taller than most reptiles. With that being said, we are giants compared to these creatures. So, if when approaching the tank, I look smaller rather than looking like a big threat when I'm walking in the room and he hasn't had a chance to really get a good look at me and see who I am, this may help the taming process. Now, granted, this wasn't really something that was given to me as this is what you do and this is a specific direction to help with taming. And I asked Darren Oliver, who's been breeding Ackie monitors for over 10 years, if this was a good idea. And he said, hey man, it can't hurt. So with that being said, I think it was a good move. And the other good thing is it'll keep the floor cleaner, because I'm just tired of getting all that dirt from the tracks on the floor all the time.
Well, I was told by Darren Oliver, if you use a quartz sand that's commonly found in pet stores, the issue is that under a microscope, these little particles are actually sharper and can irritate the skin and eyes of your Ackie monitor. And from personal experience, after having this conversation with him, I noticed when digging through the warm side of the animal's enclosure that a couple times when the substrate was really dry, my skin started to get itchy and irritated after messing with this, and I decided that I needed to make a change.
Side note, guys, this is the first time I ever used this topsoil, and let me tell you, I'm really happy with this product. I don't see any sticks. I haven't found any plastic or anything since I've been digging around and mixing this stuff up. This stuff is great, man. Yeah, I'm definitely using this from now on. Woo! Taking stuff out of the enclosure is the easy part. Hard part is, how am I gonna get you out?
Okay, a quick scoop under the belly, and he actually didn't have a problem with me lifting him up and putting him in here. And now he's in here, and he's tongue flicking. Okay, so it's not too bad of a sign, but he just have his neck kind of reared, and he may be a little stressed. That's why I put a couple pieces of wood in here, just so something smells familiar. but it's okay, bud, because now I can get back to work, finish this up quickly, hopefully, and then you'll be back in your newly renovated enclosure, okay? Love you, bud. Don't hate me.
Okay, finally got all the stuff out. The hard part is trying to figure out where I buried all the rocks. So all the rocks are gone. Got all my rocks right here, which will be transferred to the new enclosure. All right, let's get the rest of this dirt out. I haven't seen this tank this empty in a while. Oh, it took a lot to get all that stuff out. All right, let's continue. So once I took out all the rocks, all the wood, everything that was inside the enclosure, this thing was super easy to lift up as big as it is. Now, had this been a glass enclosure, it would have taken 2 people just to lift this thing up off the ground and to get it over to the spot where it's at now. So yeah, guys, wood, PVC enclosures, I'm always gonna preach that. So if you look right here, I have this heavy duty plastic tote. So the first thing I'm going to put in here is a dig box for Thunder. So Thunder is a little over a year now and he's pretty big. So a couple of inches of substrate was not hacking it anymore. He couldn't completely bury his body in a lot of areas that didn't have tall mounds of substrate for him to dig into. So I got him this nice dig box because it's almost 10 feet tall, which is plenty for a male Ackie monitor. And the awesome thing is it'll hold humidity better, just like one of those humid hides that you use for geckos and stuff, because it'll have this nice lid on top. So all I gotta do is just cut a hole big enough for him to get in and out. To cut a decent hole in this thing. The only issue is if you look at some of the edges here, it's a little bit scratchy, and I don't want this guy to get cut. What I'm gonna do is take this little torch here, and I'm just gonna go lightly around the edges here, just so that way I can get all those little sharp edges nice and smooth. Now guys, 2 things when you're doing this. 1, don't inhale the gas that comes out when you're melting plastic. It's very bad for you. Number 2, if you're not an adult, you're not doing this with adult supervision, please don't take my video and say, oh, Scales told me to do this and that's why I burnt the house down. This is not something that you should be doing if you're too young or not responsible with fire or any other matter. So guys, only do this if you are a sound adult. Know the risks that are coming with it because you're dealing with fire, and please, please, please be careful. All right, looking nice and smooth and good to go. Now guys, one more thing I do after I'm done making the edges softer with a little torch, I always wait for it to cool down first. Yet again, don't get burnt because Scales is doing this. And once it's nice and cool, I take my finger and I just run it across the edges here, just to make sure everything feels nice and smooth, just to see if I missed a spot. Another thing I did, that I just finished, guys. So the thing is, I had to move this basking light right here. It was literally right over top where the new dig box is gonna be. And the thing is, the dig box is plastic. And my enclosure isn't that tall. That's another reason why his forever home is gonna be a 6x3x3 instead of a 6x2x3, is because when it's taller, I'll have enough space to actually hang the lighting without worrying about something being too close to it. I don't want it to cause a fire or melt, so I decided to move it over a few inches so that way this dig box is still on the warm side where it belongs, but also I still have a place where I have an actual basking spot where the animal can warm its body up. If he tried to warm his body up right here where he's this close to the spot, either he's not gonna bask there because it's too hot or he's gonna get burns. So moved it over so the basking spot will be here now, and this nice box will still get plenty of heat from being on the warm side. All right, let's get to the rest of this. Woo! So another thing I was doing. So the thing is, some of the wood being in that moist substrate got diseased over the time, which basically just means that it's just rotting, breaking down. The other ends, this end wasn't completely buried, so this end is perfectly fine. And if you look at this end here, it was on the hot side. So this one's not really breaking down that much either. You can see the line where it was buried at underneath the soil, but this soil was pretty dry. So this piece of wood right here, all the pieces here are pretty solid, but this just had to go. So I just trimmed out that piece of the diseased wood just so that way everything's nice and fresh. Whew. Big shout out to my dad for gifting me a toolbox with a saw, safety gloves, and safety glasses. Yet again, kids, don't do this. This is for adults. This is something you do with adult supervision, or if you're a responsible adult. Be careful. I put in this rock outcrop back here. Now, guys, remember, when it comes to rocks, make sure you put the rocks in first and make sure you stack them properly where there's no wiggle. As you can see, guys, none of these rocks are moving. That's how you want it to be. My enclosure is moving with me shaking it more than the actual rocks. So, guys, yeah, just make sure that your rocks are stacked properly. If you're gonna use real rocks, you can always use something ceramic or something made of foam that's painted to look like rocks. And that is a safe alternative because if it falls on your lizard, it's not gonna do anything, or reptile or whatever. But if you're gonna use real rocks, guys, just be safe. Put the rocks in first before you put in the substrate. Make sure the heaviest ones are on the bottom. And if you're putting rocks on top that are, even if they're lighter, if they're too flimsy and they're wiggling too much, honestly, just either put them in the enclosure by themselves or just toss it and use a different rock. Just be safe, guys, please. I don't want anyone's lizard to get crushed because of this, so yeah, be careful. Okay, so the first thing I did was put this enclosure up on a stand. It's a good idea to approach an animal from the side rather than approaching the animal from up above, like a bird or some sort of predator that's trying to pounce on the animal. And I think this will actually help us build a better relationship. I've seen tremendous success when I move my blue-tongued skink from the same spot that the Ackie enclosure was at to the wine rack in my kitchen. So once I put him on top of the wine rack, I noticed within 1 month, he tamed down very quickly. So with that being said, with seeing some positive results of doing that, why not do the same thing for my Ackie monitor? Okay, second thing I did was change the substrate. Now, after talking to Darren Oliver, and I've heard a few times that play sand was actually better than regular sand. I mean, of course I would never use that god-awful calca sand stuff that's literally like the worst substrate on the market. But at the same time, he told me that even the regular quartz sand you buy at the pet shops, it can irritate the eyes of the Ackie monitor because the pieces are sharper, and it can also irritate their skin. And I noticed a few times while digging through the warm side of the enclosure, the dry loose sand actually made my hands kind of itchy. And it was around the same time I had the conversation with Darren. So I was like, wow, okay, this confirms 100% of what he's saying. So I decided to do a different mixture here. So what I have here is a simple mixture of 30% play sand and 70% topsoil. I'm gonna show you guys the topsoil that I use. You've probably already seen the bags from my Instagram when I was basically promoting this video, but at the same time, I'll show them again in this video towards the end. Now then, after I did that, another thing that we talked about was the enclosure size. Guys, as I've said before, I have a 4x2x2. That is technically too small for an Ackie monitor for the simple fact that it is not deep enough to hold a full foot of substrate. As my Ackie monitor is getting older, he can no longer completely bury himself in this substrate. Now, going back 6 months ago, or even when I first got him, Thunder could dig under this soil and he can hide for days and completely bury himself without any problems. But as he got bigger, it was time for a change. And I was like, okay, well, what do I do? Well, the positive is that he actually turned out to be a male. Thank goodness, because females dig more than males do. They need more substrate in order to dig and feel comfortable, especially when they're ovulating and then they're laying those infertile eggs, or if you're breeding, fertile eggs, right? Well, obviously as a male, he's not gonna lay any eggs, and he technically doesn't need as much substrate as a female would need going through her ovulation. So a quick way to get around that is to make a dig box. Some people call it a lay box. My Ackie is a male and he's not laying any eggs, so since there's no eggs being laid, I'm just gonna call it a dig box for now, or a humid hide. Now, the awesome thing about this is it allows my animal to dig 9 inches deep into this box I keep it on the warm side so that way he's nice and warm. And with this lid in this small opening in front, it actually traps more humidity than the open substrate across the entire enclosure. Another thing that I noticed was when it gets warmer outside, my ambient temperatures tend to get a little bit too high. What I mean is the cool side sometimes hits mid 80s to 90 degrees. Now that's way too warm for a cool side, right? You want that at about 80 degrees or at best high 70s, right? Well, what I did was I moved the basting spot over a little bit more towards this corner here, where you can still get that wide beam of heat, but at the same time, it's not more towards the middle of the enclosure, so that way he can thermoregulate better. Okay, so another thing in the enclosure that I really wanted to change was the wood. Now, the thing is, any wood that you get, whether you buy it in a pet shop or you do what I do and you find your wood outside and you clean it properly, wood always breaks down when it's in a humid environment. Now, for the most part, if you look at this piece of wood, this part was on the warm side where it was constantly dry, so this spot stayed dry as a bone and it didn't break down. This piece did, however, so I sawed off this piece just so that way there's not a whole bunch of decaying diseased wood in the enclosure. And the other thing I did, you guys remember that long branch I had that was basically making an arc over the entire enclosure? Well, it really wasn't going to fit in here after adding the dig box, and honestly, it didn't serve much purpose because even though Ackie monitors do climb, they're technically not an arboreal species of monitor lizard. These guys are a burrowing terrestrial species of monitor lizard. So with that being said, I cut a small piece just so this guy can access it easier, and it's not all the way up here being obnoxious towards the ceiling of the enclosure. So 2 more small items that I did when renovating the enclosure. So as you guys may have seen in some of my videos, the handle from the door fell off, I think about a month ago. I think so. Anyway, I just wanted to replace that, so I put a new one right here. I was gonna replace both thinking that they were both getting old, but for some reason this one won't come off no matter how hard I pull, so if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? So I'm just gonna leave this one here for now. Hopefully that one will never fall off and everything will be great. And one more thing that was very important that needed to be done, that I probably would have done anyway, even without the enclosure revamp, was it was time to change the UV light. Now, the thing is, I did put a sticker on the UV light, but that fell off due to high humidity and whatever, thunder running around, something causing the sticker to fall off. One thing that is an easy reminder that helped me remember when to change the UVB bulb was the fact that when I got my UVB bulb, I made a video and put it up on YouTube the same day. Awesome about that is I can use it as a reference whenever I'm changing my UVB bulbs. I can just look back at the date and say, hey, when's the last time I changed the bulb? 365 days ago. Okay, awesome. All that means is it's time for me to change the UVB. Well, I got another video uploading now that I'm working on, so this one's going to be at around the same time, so that way I'll know when to change my UV bulb again next year. So that was really something important that needed to be done. So he's got fresh UVB, better basking spot, he's on a nice stand, he's got better substrate, and he has that awesome dig box. Guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that little bell icon if you want to see more of my content. And don't forget to follow the Instagram as well. That's scales_13. That's where I announce all my videos, and you get some cool little pics in between of my lizards when I'm hanging out with them. Lizards, snakes, everybody basically. So I made a mess in my bedroom, and I gotta clean up before my wife gets home, so I gotta go. But I hope everybody has a great day. Peace. Oh, geez, man, even after I cleaned up the bedroom, there's still all this topsoil and sand left. God, man, what am I gonna do with it?